I'm a qualified architect, and the thing that really interests me with wine is starting from scratch with a bare earth and designing a wine from the ground up. I'm David Trafford. The Trafford Wines really grew out of being a hobby that I enjoyed with my father. We focus on red wines here. We're on the slopes of the Helderberg at 393 meters above sea level. We have a small 5-hectare vineyard planted mostly with Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Merlot, and a little bit of Cabernet Franc. We pride ourselves in being a place to discover. I've done a harvest every year since I was 21 years old. I always wanted the Trafford Wines to retain that kind of artisanal way of making wine and scale of production. So we've never used any yeast since our first vintage in 1992. We've never bought a packet of yeast. We never add any acid or tartaric acid or anything like that to the wine. We hardly ever filter the wines. So it's really just caring for the wine very fastidiously. We don't like to think ourselves as natural wine as such, because that's sort of come to mean something else, but basically trying to do as little as possible, minimal intervention. And we've been doing that since 1992. It's not just a sort of a recent kind of fad. So one of the things that really marry my architectural background and the wine are our labels. For our white wines, Chenin Blanc, we have my wife's artwork on the label. And then the red wines are mostly a plan of the cellar. Our flagship wine is our Elevation 393, which is basically the best barrels from this vineyard. Elevation 393 is an elevation of the house, which is in the middle of the vineyard. So I was invited to be a Cape Winemakers Guild member back in 2000. So I've been a member for 22 years. It's really meant a lot for me, especially not coming from a formal training background. The auction is an opportunity to showcase our skills with just a couple of barrels. We've really focused on producing a Cabernet Franc-based Bordeaux blend, which we call Perspective. I think experimental wine is the wrong word to use, because it's not an experiment as such. It's trying something a little bit extra special in a very small scale way. Consistency is also important. Each year you've got to adapt, but you don't want wine to be made in a different way from year to year. You want to have a consistent way of making wine through the decades, really, and so that the actual vineyard becomes expressed more than your winemaking techniques.